Hi folks, welcome to my little punch needle video. I'm gonna get you started on your punch needle journey. Aren't you excited? If you bought a kit from me, I'll teach you the stitches you need to complete the project and any little techniques I know and tricks and tips I'll tell you as well. So first of all, we're just gonna start with the threading a needle. So you either bought a wooden needle from me or a plastic, excuse me. Let's start by threading the wooden needle. So it's really simple. Just twist your yarn to get it to a point. You put it through the eye of the needle. You guide the yarn down through the slit, and you're just going to keep your yarn loose like that. And then, yeah, that's it. Okay, now if you bought a plastic one, this is what you do. It's a little bit of a longer process. So you're going to take your needle threader that it came with. You'll just separate it a bit so it's like a loop. You'll put it in the tip of the needle and thread it down to the bottom, just like that. So you now have the loop coming out the bottom. You'll take your yarn, twist it again. You will thread it through the needle threader, and then you're going to pull your tag, and out comes your yarn. Now, there are pros and cons to both needles. The pros of the plastic one is that you have different needle heights, which allows you to have different loop heights for your punch needle. So you have 4 different heights. The longer the needle, the longer the loop, and I'll show you that a bit later. So it's nice that it's adjustable. I find I get frustrated with this because you have to use that threader every time your yarn falls out. So that it's just an extra step. Now with the wooden one, it's easier to thread, but you only have 1 stitch height. So it's your preference really. Or you can buy both. Okay, now we're gonna get on to punching. I'll teach you the 2 stitches that we use in the project. Okay, so let's move on to the stitch types. This is monk's cloth. It's the most common type of fabric used for punch needle. You can use linen or any other type of cotton, but what you want to look for is the weave of the fabric. You can see how loose this weave is. You can see my fingers through it. So the yarn sits in, once you punch it, the yarn sits in between one of these squares, and it's the tightness of the fabric, or you want it to be as tight or taut really as possible, so that it holds the fabric in, or sorry, it holds the yarn in. In your kit you got a canvas with monk's cloth, and you want it to sound like a drum. That's how tight, taut it has to be. Here I've used just a dissolvable fabric marker. You can use a pencil to draw your pattern. This one is nice because it is easily removed with just a little bit of water, so it's very user-friendly. Okay, so, and I apologize for any hammering or sawing you hear in the background, where our house is under construction and I can't seem to escape the sound. Okay, so I'm threading my needle. You always want to keep your yarn loose behind you, so it's nice and slack, so that it's just about the combination of the tension of the fabric and of the yarn that keeps the yarn in. Okay, so you're gonna punch through. For your first stitch, you're just gonna hold the bottom of the yarn so it doesn't come out, and then I'm gonna go about every 3 squares. that. So yeah, you're counting every 3 squares. You're going to follow your line. And that, can you see it? Is punch needle. It's pretty easy and fun. I'm going to keep going. Now this type of stitch is called flat stitch because it's flat. Now I'm going to teach you loop stitch, but first we're just going to cut. Let's just say we were done this part. Actually, you know what? Fucking needles. Okay, so this is loop stitch. We've got our yarn. Now the secret to loop stitch, it's flat stitch, but from the back. See how simple punch needle is? So this is my front. I'm going to switch over to my back, and I'm going to put my needle through. Once again, I'm going to pull my thread, my yarn, hold it for my first stitch, and then I'm going to start punching. And I'm going to punch as close to the edge of the circle as possible. And again, I'm going to punch every 3 or so squares. Just kind of want consistency. And that's it. So simple, hey? Now let's just flip it over and see what it's looking like. So that's loop stitch, little loopies. Now as I stitch inward, it's going to fill out and it's going to be really pretty. So to fill in the circle, I'm just going to work inwards. And in a moment, I'm going to speed it up because you don't want to watch me punch this whole thing at regular speed. I just love the sound of the needle punching, don't you? So satisfying. All right, let's speed this up. Okay, so we've got our adorable loop stitch circle. Now when you cut it, same kind of thing as when you do your flat stitch. You're going to cut it and hold your piece of yarn and pull out your needle. But then you're going to cut as close to the loops as possible so that you don't see the end of the yarn. See that? Now, as I mentioned earlier, the benefit of the plastic punch needle is the adjustable height. So I'm going to show you how that works. You should push it in, you click it into place, and that's the longest needle height. Again, there are 4 options, but I'll show you what the loops look like when your needle height is this long. So I'm going to turn over, punch through, hold my piece of yarn, oops, okay, and then I'm going to start punching. Let's see what that looks like on the other side. Look at those loopos. So that's pretty cool. Allows a lot more height. Now I'm going to show you a technique called tufting. Hang tight. So if you want to create even more texture, there's a technique called tufting, and basically all it is cutting your loops. You're going to want really sharp scissors, and you just trim them like that. Over here with the tighter loops, you can trim them as well, or you can just kind of skim the top. Oh. And it just creates like fluffiness, which is nice. You could even use like a shaver too. If you want to get all fancy, I just use scissors. But see that? Nice and soft. And then you can kind of just even it out as you go along. So yeah, that's tufting. I'm just going to show you a couple of tips on if you run into any trouble, and then we're done. Then you know basically all I know about punch needle. Okay, so we have our flat stitch here. Just say your stitches came out like that. Who knows, they got snagged, or your yarn wasn't loose enough, so there wasn't enough the proper tension. You can easily rip out your other stitches, pull your yarn back, and restitch. Oops, look at that, I even made a mistake. Simple, right? Now, just say, I'm gonna cut this. Let's get crazy now, okay? Just say a stitch came out like that, and your piece is already cut, you don't want to redo it, and you're like, oh my God. You take your needle or scissors or something, and you literally just poke the piece back in. It's like, could it be any easier, right? And you can kind of go in the back and pull the loops a bit to make them all even. So that's another way to fix it. Now, just say you thought, oh my God, I can't believe I did this green color. I'm gonna rip it out. You rip it out and you're like, no, look, my cloth is all messed up. Oops. What you do is you readjust your holes like that. Just even them out again. And then you repunch. Like I'm telling you guys, it's pretty simple and very forgiving. I think that's it. So now you know how to punch needle, and I think you're gonna love it. If you have any questions, concerns, just ask me. Thanks for following along on the punch needle journey.